So I think it's been about 7 years now since the release of RimWorld. And I gotta be honest with you on this one, because the years go by, new incredible games come out such as say Elden Ring and whatnot, but nothing, at least to me, nothing comes even close to RimWorld and probably never will. Yes, there are other games that either came before it or are newer that kind of borrow some of these concepts and, have a similar premise, but they're not quite like it. And then of course, there's a ton of RimWorld clones out there. Since the release of this game, a lot of other games tried to do the same thing or put their own twist on it. Other newer games like Stranded, Alien Dawn tried to borrow from similar concepts but actually make it a 3D, nicer looking type of game, but it doesn't even come close. To be honest with you, nothing out there really even comes close to RimWorld in general. There's really nothing like it. If I had to decide on one and I had to pick one game to say this is my favorite of all time, this is the game that comes as close to perfection as possible, it would definitely be RimWorld. And that's obviously going to be subjective because it's a very specific type of game. A lot of people, myself included, might name Skyrim on that list also. You might say Fallout or something like that. You might say Elden Ring. You might even say Call of Duty. It just depends on what you're into. But if you're specifically into colony survival sims, there is absolutely nothing like it out there. What's really funny is that I was already recording this video, and in the middle of recording it, like 2 days ago, the game just got a new DLC, which is Odyssey, and it's really good. So let me just start by introducing you to this game in case you're not familiar with it, and then we can go over all the different things that I like about it and why this is the most replayable game of all time in my opinion. So what exactly is RimWorld? Well, some of it I already explained, right? I said that it's in the category of a colony survival sim. That's what it's quote-unquote labeled as, but it's not really just that. It's definitely also that, but it's also a sandbox, and first and foremost, I would say it's a story generator kind of game. No run that you play for this game will ever be the same. Yes, there are similar things that technically could happen. You might have one of your pawns die in a very similar way as one of the other ones did on your last game, for example. That could happen, but it will never be the same. This is because just about every little thing about your game is going to be procedurally generated, right? The world, the events, everything is generated, and especially if you're playing with Randy Random as your storyteller, everything is always generated. The world itself, the biome, the animals, the characters, all the events, everything is always going to be generated, and it's always going to be different. And there's a lot of things that comes down to chance that could happen. Just using as an example, in this playthrough, one of my characters lost their leg, right? Which is very common. Your character can get their leg shot off, and now, as you can see, my character has a peg leg. This is not the first time this has happened. But then other things that might seem very similar in nature might happen, and the game just takes a wild turn and you start questioning yourself, what am I even doing? Let's use this pawn as an example. It's the same run. This is all happening within the same game, the same playthrough that I used to record this video. My other little character here, my other pawn as they're called, ended up getting in a firefight defending our little village here. And she ended up losing an organ, right? She got her right lung shot off. And this is an important character, right? Because she is actually married to the leader of the group. And within my religion and society that I structured there, characters have to be married to have kids. I'm going to explain all of that later because you can get really creative with all the religions, all the philosophies. You can create a society from the ground up and, make them follow whatever rules you want. But in this particular case, this female is married to the leader of the group, right? And it's very important for them to be able to have kids, to be able to grow the colony. Not only that, but this character is also a really good shot. She's my main hunter. She's really accurate. So I really didn't want to lose this character or retire her or put her out of commission, and losing organs and things like that or, limbs is going to make your character not perform as well, obviously. So I suddenly find myself in this really strange situation where I'm going after a lung. I'm trying to find a replacement lung for this character. And in this game, if you don't know, you can actually either buy or extract organs and things like that. You can actually build prosthetics. You can build later on as your technology evolves, which we're also going to talk about that. You can perform surgeries on certain characters and give them back, organs they have lost, or actually make enhancements on the character altogether. As the game progresses, you get way more into futuristic and sci-fi type of stuff. But I keep trying to figure out how to help this character, and I don't want to do anything quote-unquote immoral. This game, by the way, You might as well call it a war crime simulator, because you can be as evil or as nice as you want. The whole society I was going for is supposed to be like the Knights Templar or something like the Space Marines. I was going for a like uber Christian, conservative type of society where everybody has to be married, always do the right thing, be righteous. That's what I was going for. Ended up not being like that in the end. So what eventually ends up happening here? Well, essentially there are three quote-unquote wild people that wander into my colony, right? This is a type of pawn that doesn't have any faction or affiliation. Sometimes they don't even talk. Or actually, I believe that they don't even talk, right? Because they're basically animals. They're wild people. They're not even indigenous. They just basically act like animals. They don't attack you. They just kind of live off the land. Generally speaking, they're pretty much just like any other animal. They do their own thing and they don't really get in the way that often. You could play an entire game without even bothering with them, or eventually they'll just go away type of thing. There are some times where they can get a little bit annoying because, you know, the whole biome is full of resources like berries and stuff like that. And if they're also living there, they're also consuming these resources and now they're not available to you. So yes, you might end up choosing to just kill them or get rid of them for that reason because they're kind of like consuming resources that could be yours. I was mostly leaving them alone in this run. They weren't really bothering me until I realized and thought to myself, these are actually, they're not really humans, but they're humanoid. Therefore, they have lungs. So next thing I know, my very quote-unquote honorable society finds itself doing something not so great. We basically capture a couple of these wild people and we start trying to perform repeated surgeries to no success in order to try to extract their lungs. Because again, I'm basically trying to do a transplant. I'm trying to get their lungs and give it to my pawn that I need to be able to perform and stay alive. And at this point of the game, my doctor is not exactly the best, right? I don't have the best doctor that you can have. And I also don't have a lot of technology. So these surgeries are very primitive in nature. And we repeatedly keep botching the surgery over and over. I keep opening them up. They're bleeding all over the place. I keep shoving them with beer or quote-unquote smoke leaf, which is another drug that you can probably imagine what it is. I keep getting these guys stoned and repeatedly botching surgeries to try to steal their lungs. And we keep doing this over and over, opening them up, failing. They almost bleed out. We patch them up, give them like a beer or something just to numb the pain, and then give it a couple days and we're back to trying to cut the lungs open again. And this goes on for quite a while. Like the game can be pretty gruesome. Nothing's gross or nasty because it's all, little 2D characters, but if you think about it, it's pretty messed up. You can also get particularly weird and cruel about it if you want. I don't know, everybody's into something different. It's a fantasy world. Nobody can tell me that this game is any more violent than GTA, and that's everybody's favorite game. So there may or there may have not been also another situation where I had a very, very annoying pawn that was also very aggressive. He was always getting in fights with everybody, and he was generally not happy, on top of being addicted to substances to a very large degree. This particular pawn would often insult everybody, put everybody in a bad mood. He was very quote-unquote non-compliant. He would have these mental breaks and go on insulting sprees, get in fights and hurt everybody. And I couldn't really get rid of him because he was my only cook. He was the only pawn that knew how to make food. So what did I do? Well, I had to get creative. And again, I may or may not, this is allegedly, I may or may not have extracted his tongue out and he couldn't speak anymore. And then the problem was solved because yes, he was still grumpy, but he wasn't going around insulting everybody anymore. He would just cook and be quiet. So these are things that can happen in the fucking game. Now, aside from all this very weird and barbaric organ and limb extraction type of conversation and stuff that you can do in this game, which by the way, you can also sell the organs and, let's move on from this subject, but that is a thing that you can do. You can run a organ trafficking, smuggling empire if you want. That is a thing you can do. But aside from that, what else are you doing? Well, mostly you're trying to keep your people alive, and it depends on how you want to play the game. You can play this game in a way where, you're just trying to make the most advanced civilization possible, and if something bad happens, you just save scum type of thing. But that's not really the way the game is quote-unquote meant to be played. You're going to notice that makes the game get boring very quick. The fun thing about this game is living with the randomness and the consequences of your actions. That's what really creates stories, and makes interesting stuff happen and puts you in weird positions. I had, for example, this one scenario where we got invaded by raiders and everybody got killed except I had one little kid that wasn't even a teenager. I think they were like 10 or 11 years old, and a baby, right? And both of these characters hid in a room, and everybody else got killed except these two characters. So I could have quit the game, but I decided to keep playing only now with this little kid and the baby. So what did they have to do? Well, first of all, that little kid had to bury everybody, all their relatives, uncles, parents, and everybody else, siblings. They had to bury everybody. And now at the age of 11, they had to raise this little baby. And it went on to be a whole other story. Like that started a whole other society. And I was actually able to continue the game from that very precarious and ridiculous point. And it just really depends on what you want to put up with. You can just reload the game or start new. You don't have to keep playing. But I find that the most funny and interesting and messed up stuff happens if you keep playing no matter what. Generally speaking, you're just trying to keep everybody alive, keep everybody fed and warm, because yes, people can die from hypothermia, or if it's too hot, or they can get shot, or they can get eaten by a bear, or everything could catch on fire, or they could get the plague. There's a million things that could kill your entire civilization here. So you're just trying to keep everybody alive. Depending on which quote-unquote storyteller you choose, there's not really this progression that's eventually designed for you to lose the game. In this game, you can choose quote-unquote storytellers, which are basically the quote-unquote gods that are going to decide how your game plays out. Some of them are very standard, where they're going to give you a progression of a difficulty curve. The game is going to start out easier, and it's going to go through these periods where it gets increasingly more difficult. So you got to kind of keep up with the game. That is not my particular favorite storyteller. I tend to prefer to play with Randy Random, which means that everything is random. Really messed up stuff could start from day one, or they could just not happen at all. I like the whole randomness, it's up to chance type of thing. But the game doesn't really have an objective. Yes, you have a final quest to quote-unquote beat the game, but I rarely ever do that. It's more fun to just keep things going type of thing and see for how long I can go. There is a point where your civilization might get too big, and you can actually run multiple colonies at once. That's something you can also do. I don't like doing that because then it starts getting way too complicated to manage everything, but you can do that. You can set up other encampments to send you supplies and stuff like that, but I tend to like to just play with the one colony that I'm currently playing with. And if there's too many people, I just basically have them stop having kids, right? You can have your males get vasectomies and stuff like that. You have full control out of everything you want to do. And generally speaking, as you're surviving, as you're trying not to get killed by raiders and stuff like that, and all these different political conflicts and weird things that are unfolding, like a mechanoid invasion or just being attacked by your neighbors, you're also trying to advance in the technology system of the game. I tend to really like to start this game just with a tribe, right? So people that are hunting with sticks, and work my way all the way up to where everybody is like a space marine at that point. And that's kind of the premise, and every little thing in the game is very, very craftable. Like you either have to buy it or you have to make it, and everything has a clear use and purpose. Like I had mentioned before, there's a lot of different ways that your pawns can die in this game. One of them is hypothermia, so your characters do need clothes. As a matter of fact, most of them really don't like being nude, and it's going to cause a mood debuff. So why do mood debuffs matter? Like, why does it matter if your character is not happy? Well, if they're not happy, they start having these mental breakdowns and becoming psychotic and doing all kinds of random stuff that just screws your entire game, and they get in fights with everybody, they break your stuff. So you have to keep everybody happy also. It's not just about surviving, it's also about thriving. And in thriving, they also need clothes, right? So you might think, okay, well, can I just start the game with clothes? Technically you can, but everything has a life, right? Your shirt is going to get worn. Your boots are going to get worn and eventually not work anymore. You're going to have to either buy or make new ones. So you're constantly either trading and buying new stuff, or you're just crafting, right? You're making boots for your characters. You're making armor for them. You're making shirts. You're making pelt coats and stuff like that. You're crafting guns, you're crafting swords, everything you're kind of making from scratch, or getting lucky enough to find a society that has some of those for sale, and lucky enough that you have the money. Maybe over the game you've done a really good job with the organ harvesting stuff we were talking about before, and you managed to sell a lot of those, so now you have money and you can buy stuff. Or You just have to craft everything from scratch. Every pawn in this game has different things that they're good at. Some of them are not good at anything, so all they can do is just clean. Some of them are good soldiers, so they're really good in combat. Some of them are good cooks. Some of them are very intellectual, and they're part of your research team. Some of them are really good at construction or mining, right? Or planting or cutting plants or harvesting crops and stuff like that. So every pawn in the game has a very specific set of skills, right? And you have to use those to your advantage and manage everybody and their resources and everybody's happiness and well-being and even their relationships, right? That could be something that's a little more cute, right? Your pawns, they can get married, they can have kids, and it's, pretty cute. Or it's more annoying stuff, like two people that really don't like each other because one guy keeps hitting on the other guy's wife, so they're constantly fighting to the death type of thing. So then you have to deal with that or get rid of one of them. When something bad happens though, like say one of your pawns dies, people in the colony, they get depressed, especially if it's a relative or something like that. If somebody dies, everybody's depressed. Okay, but so what? That just sounds like role-playing, right? Why does it matter if the characters get depressed? Well, because if everybody's depressed, they stop working. They start not wanting to do anything. They start fighting. They start having these weird mental breakdowns, and then suddenly everything falls apart. Suddenly your person that stays in the kitchen is not cooking anymore because they're depressed because mom got eaten by bears, and next thing you know there's no food, and then all of a sudden everybody's turning into a cannibal, and everything goes downhill from there, right? So things can spiral out of control very quick. This is the type of game where everything can seemingly be going amazing. Like you get to this point where, man, nothing can stop me type of thing. The game is actually getting so boring that I probably want to start over a new game. Then all of a sudden somebody gets the flu. And then next thing you know, everybody's now contaminated with the flu or the plague or tons of other diseases that could happen, like gut worms, like you eat spoiled meat because you didn't properly clean the kitchen. So now everybody has worms and now everybody's dying of malnutrition and everything suddenly falls apart. Or you might just get invaded by mechanoids or some raid or something horrible happens, like one of your characters gets kidnapped by another society and now you have to put on this expedition to go rescue them. And in the middle of all of this, you have all these different quests that are going on, right? Different things that factions might request from you or things that you can do that reap different rewards. So it gives you these side objectives that you can go for. Or main quests also, right? Well, what exactly is a main quest? Well, every society has quote-unquote holy relics, things that are important to your culture. In this particular run, because I was going with, the Knights Templar or something inspired in them like Space Marines, our main thing is to find the Holy Grail or other artifacts that are part of, Christian religion, like the Ark of the Covenant and stuff like that. I made all of this, right? So you create all of this stuff and you bring it to life, which is really cool. So the game will eventually start giving you these quests that are either clues or the actual location of some of these relics, like the Holy Grail. And now you got to put together this expedition to go loot or find the Holy Grail type of thing. And you got to bring it back, and your society is going to be super happy if you have that in your church or whatever temple, whatever you decided to call it. One of the coolest things about this game is the fact that, like I said, you can shape their entire religion and society from the ground up. You can use something that already exists, or you can make something from scratch, right? If you want to make a society of cannibals, you can do that. If you want to make a giant harem or something like that, you can do it. If you want to make a matriarchy where no males are allowed, you can do that. You can do whatever you want. You can even make a society of occultists that believe that everybody should be blind, so nobody has eyes type of thing. They all perform surgeries on themselves and scratch their eyes out. You can make it as weird or as vanilla as you want. And of course, the game also has a very thriving mod scene, which adds a lot to this, but generally speaking, even without mods, you can pretty much shape everything about this game. Like I said, you can shape their belief system. So if you decide that every 4th of July, they're gonna have, they're gonna celebrate the magic spaghetti monster on the sky. You can literally call the deity, you can call their god the spaghetti monster. And you can name the festival the Spaghetti Monster Dance. And it's just, like a nude dance party in the middle of the living room. You can make them have Christmas, like more normal stuff. You get to decide everything and what it's called. And then there are other things that you can also create. You don't have to have human characters, right? You can make them be different type of aliens with different type of powers or different type of weaknesses, and you can shape your playthrough and make it easier or more entertaining or more difficult based on all these different things that you choose them to be. And then you can also decide what the morals of your society are. You can decide if they believe in something messed up like slavery. You can decide if they hate or if they like aliens, if they're okay with harvesting organs or not, if they're okay with, I don't know, same-sex marriage, if they are, like, literally everything you can decide. If, they're monogamous or if they're not. You can decide if they, no men are allowed in your society type of thing. You can decide that at the age of 60, everybody gets killed. Like, whatever, literally whatever you want, which the way I'm saying it makes it sound so weird. But if you play RimWorld, you know what I'm talking about. You can make it as vanilla or as bizarre as of a creation as you want. And that level of unapologetic creative freedom is what makes the game also so fun. You can really do whatever you want in a time where everything is so sanitized and everything needs to follow some sort of moral compass, right? Or there are things that are problematic or not. Like, you can do whatever. This game says screw it to all of that, and it puts all the power in your hand, and you can do whatever you want with it and just have fun. Every little thing in this game serves a purpose. Either it's a small purpose or a big one, or the purpose that you want to give it. For example, animals. You can actually train just about every single animal in the game. I don't know, maybe you find a bear, right? There's a bear that attacked one of your civilians and you shot the bear. And next thing you know, the bear's hurt and you feel bad for that bear. So you take it in and you're now taking care of this giant monster. And in the process, the bear grows to love you guys because you rescued it and you took care of it, and now you're training it. Next thing you know, you have a pet bear or a pet snake, whatever you want. Could be a dog. And you can train these animals to follow people around and protect them, or to haul resources, or to go hunting for you, or to protect you and fight with you in general. Like, especially if you're in a tribal era, right, or a medieval era, you're not quite in the future yet. And you're getting attacked, and next thing you know, you unleash a freaking bear on your enemies, you're going to be just fine type of thing. So it's really cool that you can do whatever you want with whatever's available in the game. It's just unrestricted freedom and creative expression combined with no story other than the story that you create, or the story that is randomly created by procedurally generated random events that might or might not happen. It's fucking incredible. So now let's go ahead and talk about DLC, because the game has quite a few DLCs to them, and in my opinion, you should buy all of them. They're all great. Yes, some people are going to disagree with me. Some DLCs are better than others. I particularly did not like Anomaly, which is one of the last ones that they made, the one before the one that came out 2 days ago. I was not the biggest fan of that DLC, but you know what? I'm going to buy it just to support the creators. Even if I don't like it that much, just to support them, just to add more RimWorld to my game, I will buy it. And as a matter of fact, the last one that they made, Odyssey, now allows you to build actual spaceships and go into space and colonize space, quote unquote, and do all this different kind of stuff, man. I'm so surprised that even after 7 years, they're still making cool DLCs for the game. I freaking love the people that make this game. I love this studio. I love this game. I will always support them. Whatever they make, I will support them. So you can take a look at all of the DLCs because they are expensive. Maybe you want to wait for a sale or something like that. They will often go on sale. Actually, I think right now they are in one because of the new release. All the previous ones are on sale. You can look through them and decide if any or all of them are worth it. I would say buy all of them, but money's a thing. I get it. So you can decide for yourself what sounds cool, what doesn't sound cool. I didn't like Anomaly. That didn't sound cool to me. It might be your favorite. It's up to you. The game is even good without DLCs. In a world where freedom of expression and fun seems to be ever more suppressed every day that goes by, RimWorld shines like a beacon of hope. It reminds me of a time where game developers weren't trying to be preachy, where everything didn't have to be about morality, politics, and not everybody was up in your business type of thing. Not everything was considered problematic. Nobody really cared. We accept that this is just a video game and it's not reality. It's supposed to be funny. But increasingly more and more, everything gets more boring, suppressed, censored, and annoying. RimWorld says screw it to all of that, and it puts all the power in your hand, and you can do with it whatever you like. For all these reasons and many others that I for sure forgot to mention, this is by far, in my opinion, the best game ever made. Should you buy, rent, sell, or never touch it? I would say not only should you buy it, you should figure out a way to have it saved on your computer to where if Steam ever goes down, if the world ends, if you had one last game, you're in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, you can't play any video games anymore, there's nothing for you to do. The only thing left to do is to play one video game that you choose for the rest of your life. Ladies and gentlemen, let that game be RimWorld. Thanks for watching. Take care.